People are trading their lives to fucking fund the government, which I think is a travesty, especially when we send the majority of it overseas and give it away to other people that aren't fucking Americans.
Jeff made a post the other day, and it's got some attention, definitely. And so obviously, Donald Trump had put out there that about 50-year mortgages, and Jeff had a really good post about that. And I'm curious what you guys think about that. What's your guys' take on that, especially from like an investment perspective? I know, Jeff, you had mentioned that this kind of changes the landscape for that. Can you talk about like how that looks for you? I have no personal real estate investments outside of my home, and we have like a build on to our house, but outside of that, I'm not really into this game. So how does that really go for you?
I don't know. I thought it was a lot to do about nothing. We'll see. We'll see if it transpires, and then we'll see what the rules are of it. Somebody posted on that post and commented and said, this is the worst thing that's happened in the history of the country. And I could name at least 10 things very fucking quickly that were far worse than the suggestion of a 50-year mortgage. I mean, I don't care personally. The
Yeah,
way I
that's
view
one.
it, I mean, I think that they were trying to insinuate that they're trying to put everybody into like servitude, right? Which I agree with. I think we're all slaves and we're all tax slaves. And the system is set up
Yep.
so that we pay 50 to 65% all in of our earned income to taxes. When you talk about consumables and everything else that you pay, additional taxes that you pay besides income tax. And then if you also add in the devaluing of the dollar that's going on, you really are making like 20 cents on the dollar for what you're actually earning. So people are trading their lives fucking fund the government, which I think is a travesty, especially when we send the majority of it overseas and give it away to other people that aren't fucking Americans. So like, fuck that. But back to the topic of 50-year mortgages. It's not really a solution to housing prices, quite frankly. The reason that housing prices are so high is because of the devaluation of the dollar, right? When 70 years ago you used to buy a house for $5,000, that's because 70 years ago we were on a gold standard and a dollar was worth what it was worth at that point in time. And if you look at the graph of the devaluing of the dollar that's gone on over time, it's a natural byproduct of just what's happened, the erosion of the worldwide economic value of the dollar. Let's talk strategically though, because I viewed it as humorous that everybody gave a shit because you're not you're not compelled to get a 50-year mortgage. There's still going to be a 15-year mortgage. There's still going to be 30-year mortgages, and there's going to be 50-year mortgages. So why everyone acts like everybody's going to be forced to take a 50-year mortgage is it's just patently false. So from my perspective, it was just a lot of like people up in the air about things that don't even matter and never have to affect them, right? And it's completely different than the subprime market where you were buying houses that were artificially inflating the value in order to get a loan. So subprime, 2008 subprime, they were getting rigged appraisals to say that this house was worth $500,000 when it was only really worth $300,000, and then they were taking a loan for $375 on the fucking thing. Different ball game. Like, so there's just misinformation all over the place about this thing. If someone wants to take a 50-year mortgage and they buy a property that's priced today, due to Dodd-Frank coming out of 2008, you cannot appraise properties the way they used to. So there's a lot more stringent rules around appraisals, and appraisers do not mess around with that. You do not get any leniency on appraisers. If anything, they knock you down now and don't even hit the full value of what the property is worth in today's market. And trust me, I've had 20 appraisals done this year. So I can tell you from experience, like real time. But this situation was that like they're going to be forever paying interest on their mortgage, right? Because the first 30 years of it are going to be basically interest. Ultimately, I would say that's not a bad thing necessarily if you're putting your money into assets that are real assets that are going to increase over time. And that's what a house does. And so, I mean, it's a lot riskier to be in the stock market. I don't think primary residences are investments at all. It's a liability any way you slice it. So, like I think where it could get really interesting is if they're available for investors. Because if I can go in and buy a fuck ton of houses and restructure my mortgages into 50-year notes or go start over all the properties I have right now and refinance them, fuck, I'll be making $1,000 a net as opposed to like $350 a door net. And so like it changes the cash flow equation drastically in the investor side of things. From a owner occupied personal residence side of things, there's still value there. I mean, saving $400 $500 a month is not nothing if it works in your financial strategy and that's what you want to do, or you're lucky enough to be 25 years old and to move into highly appreciating or gentrifying area where that house is going to double or triple in value in the next 5 to 7 years. Like, shut the fuck up with that. Like, you shouldn't get one. Like, controlling the asset is the most important thing. I say that all the time. So any way you slice it, if you can get in there and control that asset, even if you're paying interest for the first 5 years, like if you go in there for 500 grand and that property's worth 1.25 in 7 years, and you sell it and that 700 and whatever, $50,000 gain is not worth your 7 years of time just because you paid interest and you had a place to live the whole time. I just think people are like, I don't know, a bunch of people are just talking about a bunch of things because they heard it from the media. It's a lot of people that aren't ever going to take one of those mortgages anyway. So like, who cares?
Have you heard any talk about it happening on the investor side, or is that still too early?
It's too early. I've heard it. I mean, there's 40-year mortgages out there right now. They're a little harder to get and they're higher fees, but like there's stuff out there. But it changes the game on what pencils as a deal. And again, like if you can go it the I think the negative drawbacks are people are going to be very unlikely to ever sell their homes. And so it will shrink the availability, the supply, because if I can buy a property and lock it in at 4% or even 5% and it works and I'm able to make the payment and I live there for 20 years, and then you look at rents in 20 years and I've still got 30 years on that note and I can just go ahead and rent it, you just wouldn't sell it because your paper is actually what's got the value there. The note that you've already got written and locked in for 50 years is where the value is. Now it'll fuck the banks. There's no question. Because like that's where I think it's somewhat short-sighted too. It's kind of setting us up for a new like bank bailout, bank crash type thing. Because if you lock people in for 5% in today's money and you forecast it for 50 years, tell me there's not going to be any economic volatility that caused them like long-term losses for a sustained period of time with the money priced that way. And yeah, that is a real risk right there. But I don't know. It's just a tool, is the way I see it. And ultimately, when you're buying a property from an investor side, you're just buying a payment. So you want to lock that payment in and make sure your numbers work because that's where your expense ratios start, right? So like if I can lock in my known fixed payment for as long as I possibly can, then I know if all other things being equal, it's a profitable deal on the way in. I know that there's less uncertainty on that deal, right? And so when I talk about it being 500 extra dollars of cash flow, that gives you a lot more runway with increasing taxes and increasing insurance as you're able to raise the rents along with the cost of living increases that go along. So it just changes the formula for investors pretty drastically. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what they do and who is it available to. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you never own your house anyway. I mean, even if you pay it off,
Yeah.
you've still got property taxes, and they're jacking those up at crazy rates. So, I mean, I don't know. My perspective's a little different on personal residence, obviously, as I live in an RV.
Would you ever consider buying another house if they removed property taxes? Like I know Florida was talking about it.
I'd consider buying a house anyway, but Ultimately,
Oh,
we
oh,
like
okay.
traveling, but we like traveling so much, we would probably back into that property, meaning like I would probably just buy land first and then build somewhere where we could park our RV and avoid the improvements and the property taxes on that. So not go full on into a house where you're just paying the property taxes every year, but not wanting to live there full time. So, like, I would probably just build our stuff, like, back meaning, like, covered parking for my RV with power and water and sewer and everything else, and probably an outdoor living space and a pool, and that's it. No house. So you're not paying the property taxes on a home that you're not living in. That's my vision for what we're gonna do.
What about you, Sean? What do you think about it? Any thoughts there?
Well, I think Jeff covered all the bases and stadiums you could be in, but it is interesting that people just freak out over anything, and I like Jeff's point about them not needing to take it. I really it's always interesting to me when I'm talking to someone about whether they're buying a primary residence or an investment property. Like they literally break out every single thing that they're paying for, and they're like, I can't believe property taxes this, or I can't believe insurance. Like I just keep everything simple. I'm like, what's my payment? Like, I really don't care about anything else other than my payment. And so for me, if a 50-year mortgage gives me a lower payment, that's all I care about. And to Jeff's point, like it's going to get some people into the market. They're going to be able to afford a house. They're going to learn real quick that there's so many other costs associated with home ownership that their bubble is going to be burst on home ownership overall period. But for me, I just really care about how much am I paying, regardless if it's my primary residence or in my investments. If I can get my investments on a 50-year note, I'm all for it. Let's see here. Me and my wife have been married over 10 years. We've lived in 3 different houses. So that means we move every 3.5 years. Now, this house we want to be in for a long time. We've been in this house for 5 years as of last month. So half that time we've been in this home right here. This is where we truly want to be for the foreseeable future. So when you look at it that rate, like why would you not take a 50-year mortgage if like the average person moves every 7 years, I think is what the statistics say. Like you're not paying down any of the notes. You're just rolling equity over. That's it. It's really only screwing people over in the economic downturns if housing prices go down. If you took a 50-year note and most of that is interest in the first, half of the damn thing, and you happen to sell your house during an economic downturn and you didn't pay down any principal, that sucks. Or your house goes down in value, like you lost some equity. That's unfortunate, but that's the name of the game. That happens to people all the time. Happens to people with their 401ks when they're in an economic downturn the year before they retire. Now all of a sudden their Carlo simulations, the money's not hitting the right number. So I just don't like averages. I don't like hypotheticals. I don't like pulling one aspect out of a payment and saying you're going to buy a $400,000 house and after 50 years it's going to cost you 1.3 million. Well, if the payment's lower and these are the same people that follow Dave Ramsey and they buy term insurance and invest the difference. This is no different than that. You get a 50-year mortgage and you invest the difference. The opportunity cost that they're not talking about on being able to invest the other money. Now, again, you guys know I'm not putting my other money in the stock market because I don't believe in that either for myself and my strategy. But if I'm going to take a lower rate by appreciating asset, can save $250 a month over 50 years, what does an extra what's it $3,000 a year? Invest $3,000 a year compounding for 50 years. Okay, well now you're gonna have whatever 1.3 million. I did a quick thing yesterday with math, and I was like, I'm not even posting this to Facebook because I just don't even want to get in the conversation with people. So that's my 2 cents to it. I think Jeff hit all the nails on the head. For me, I just tell me what I'm paying, and I'm gonna move on with my life and just make more money, put the money through my IBC system, and buy more real estate, regardless.
Well, you have to have a
Love that.
place to live too. So there's money that is associated with that. The other thing that this might be good for, I mean, think about that is like, what if you are one of these people? Because I think about this all the time. What if you are one of these people that bought your house 40 years ago and you bought it for 20 grand, and now the taxes on it are 20 grand? And like, what if you could finance that and take a 50-year note now and pull out some of that money and use it, right? And so, like, I just think I don't know. People aren't thinking. logically on all the different avenues you could do with this. And so in my example of the house being worth 20 grand when they bought it, now now they have to sell it in some sort of short sale to a wholesaler, something like that, and they get a small amount of money, but now they've got to go rent somewhere else that is fucking $2,500 a month, and they can't afford that either, right? So like if they could do a 50-year note for a reasonable amount of money, they might be able to get a payment down to where they could afford it. And so I don't know. There's just a lot of things that pass through my mind. I think about that a lot when I deal with housing, because you see all these people that are 60, 70, 80 years old, and they did buy their houses for that little amount of money. But even if you go give them like a $200,000 gain, how long is that going to last them if it's like everything that they own? And they and now they have to go out and get a new place to live at today's cost of living, just because the property taxes are now yearly more than they bought the house for, because that's a real thing in a lot of areas. Shit, there's houses in Texas just south of Houston, I know for a fact, that I could have bought in 2012 for nearly what the property taxes are today. So it's been that fast of a compression. So like within 15 years, 20 years, what I could have bought the house for free and clear that time, the property taxes are annually now. So I mean, we got
That's
a
insane.
we got a lot of fucking financial problems. A lot. And nobody's trying to solve them. They're kind of just band-aiding them together. Everybody's pissed about the 50-year mortgage because it's a like gift to the banks is the way they view it. Then don't use the banks. Like I mean, that's ultimately the answer to it. Like I said before, you don't have to use the product. No one's forcing you to do it. So, I mean, I get why people think it's a gift to the banks, but there's also, I wish somebody would come up with some economic strategies that actually fix things long term, because we are fucking over our kids, and like it's not going to get any better at all. And so we've really got to figure that out. And ultimately, like the generation before us did not, they stuck their head in the sand and took all their 401ks and their pensions and their sweet deals for retirement to get in line and follow the company line for 35 years with the guaranteed of whatever $4,000 a month for the rest of their lives if they were good little soldiers. And but what that cost us was them like questioning local policies and economic policies as the years ticked by. And so now we've got ourselves a conundrum, because nobody solved any of these problems on a regular basis for the last 40 years, because everybody was pseudo paid off to shut up. And now like you saw the tipping point, the pendulum starting to swing when like pensions started disappearing in the 90s, and then early 2000s most of them had been restructured out of existence, right? And that was the first iteration of what kind of started happening. And now everybody's just fucking like on their own. But if you look up at the generation that like didn't speak up about any of it, they're like, well, fuck you. I'm 70 years old and like I'm good. I've got my financial house in order. It's going to last long enough to get me through the next 10 years. And so like we can't make the mistake of doing the same for our kids. Like we're going to have to solve some of these problems and call this shit out. And ultimately, I mean, I think it's going to take entrepreneurs and business owners and people in their 30s and 40s to solve this problem. Because if you look up at who caused all the problems, they're still in fucking Congress at 85 years old, shitting on themselves. So we need some new
Yeah.
ideas.
Being led by the elderly. Crap went into crap after 1971.
Yep. I don't disagree with that.
That's a great take on that. I mean, I lean on you guys for that one. That one's just, it's interesting to see your guys' point of view on that.
Yeah. You take long enough to think about it. I mean, it's our parents' fault 100%. And I mean, I don't know if anybody listens to my podcast that's my parents, but that's ultimately, I really don't feel bad about saying that. I mean, I understand how they got like lulled into complacency and fell asleep at the wheel, because it really didn't affect them that much and they were happy with where they were at. They were getting by. and making it. It probably was a microcosm of how we're treated today, because they keep us so financially stressed that you don't have the time to like look up and figure out why or what's going on, right? And then in their era, you could argue that it was a little bit different in that they gave you just a little more, so you could take one vacation a year, and you were just happy enough to save enough to put into your to max out your 401k so that they could have all that money too. But you felt like you were doing good, and you were doing the right thing, so that it was all going to be there when you decided to retire.
I was going to say, it gave us an example. It gave us an example. I mean, that's why I think the thing is now that they say is like this is the generation of freedom fighters of like time freedom and not being slave to jobs and traveling the world like what is you and your family are doing.
Well, I
And
mean, I
business
think
builders. So
ultimately, and more than anything else, it's going to take people that are willing to be unselfish and not like be able to call out a wrong as a wrong, like even if it negatively affects you in the short term. Because anybody with common sense can look at some of the economic moves that have been made and say, well, that's not going to be good long term, because there's like instability of this, and it's not going to be able to be solvent for a period of time. Like it won't be solvent past 10 years or whatever. Like people knew that shit the whole time, but they were like, you know what? I'm getting $5,000 a month for the next 10 years if I just say, yes, we should go ahead and vote for this. And so, I mean, you saw this as even in private companies, as pensions were phased out, they were using the young workers coming in and giving them like limited benefits of the same pension while funding the legacy costs of the pension. So when the costs got expensive on the top end, because the workforce aged and got older and started collecting all the benefits, right? They used the 20 through 50-year-olds to fund the existing pensions while limiting their long-term benefits. I mean, this is something that I saw in the corporate world very early on, like in my 20s. And I was like, oh, they're using the backs of these young bucks, carving off the money off of their paychecks to fund the insolvent liabilities that they had on their books already with regards to the pensions. And you saw it across the board. I mean, everybody was doing it. You still see it all
where do we
day
go
and
from
every
here?
day in the state jobs. Like they still have cushy retirement packages, and they're all insolvent. They've been insolvent. They're being propped up by other fucking slush fund tax dollar shit. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Where do we go from here? You better get in shape, be able to protect your family, learn how to fucking shoot your gun, carry it a lot, keep your head on a swivel, speak up to injustices, and tell people to fuck off when they have bad ideas for your kids.
Yes. 100%. You don't touch my kids. Don't mess with my kids. Power, presence, and profit, gentlemen.